Welcome to Dark History Doodles, where the darkest corners of history get explained with stick figures. Today, we're looking at the scientific experiments that crossed every ethical line. The ones where the researchers became the monsters. I've put the Stanford prison experiment first, because nobody died. The worst experiment on this list makes that look like a bad day at the office. In 1971, psychologist Philip Zimbardo wanted to study how people behave when given power over others. He set up a fake prison in the basement of Stanford University and randomly assigned 24 college students to be guards or prisoners. Within days, the guards became sadistic, forcing prisoners to clean toilets with their bare hands and sleep on concrete. The prisoners had breakdowns. Zimbardo himself got so caught up in his role as prison superintendent that he didn't stop the experiment until a visiting graduate student told him he had lost his mind. The experiment was supposed to last 2 weeks. It lasted 6 days. Nobody died, but Zimbardo proved something terrifying. Given a uniform and permission, ordinary people become monsters faster than anyone expected. The Milgram experiment in 1961 asked a different question. How far will ordinary people go when an authority figure tells them to hurt someone? Here's the thing. Participants were told they were helping with a learning study and instructed to deliver electric shocks to a person in another room when they answered questions wrong. The shocks went up to 450 volts, labeled with warnings like danger severe shock. The person in the other room was an actor. The screams were fake. But the participants didn't know that. And 65% of them kept going all the way to the maximum voltage because a man in a lab coat told them the experiment must continue. They sweated. They trembled. They begged to stop. But they kept pressing the button. Milgram showed that most people will torture a stranger to death if an authority figure tells them it's for science. The Tuskegee syphilis study ran from 1932 to 1972. The U.S. Public Health Service recruited 600 black men from rural Alabama. Most of them poor sharecroppers who had never seen a doctor. About 400 had syphilis. The rest were the control group. The researchers told the men they were being treated for bad blood. They were never treated for syphilis. Even after penicillin became the standard cure in 1947, the researchers withheld it so they could continue observing the disease's progression. The men went blind, went insane, and died, all while thinking they were receiving free health care. The study was exposed by a whistleblower in 1972. The U.S. government eventually paid a settlement and apologized. That apology came 40 years after the study began. The monster study was conducted in 1939 on orphan children in Iowa. A speech pathologist named Wendell Johnson wanted to prove that stuttering was learned, not innate. He took 22 orphan children, half of whom already stuttered, and divided them into 2 groups. One group was praised and told they spoke beautifully. The other group was relentlessly criticized and told they were stutterers, that their speech was broken, that they should never speak unless they could do it correctly. The children in the criticized group developed severe speech problems that lasted for the rest of their lives. Some never spoke normally again. Johnson's experiment literally created disabilities in healthy children to prove a theory. Unit 731 was a covert biological and chemical warfare research unit of the Imperial Japanese Army during World War II. Based in occupied Manchuria, its scientists conducted experiments on living human subjects, mostly Chinese civilians and prisoners of war. They deliberately infected people with plague, anthrax, and cholera to study disease progression. They performed vivisections without anesthesia to observe how organs responded to infection. They tested grenades and flamethrowers on living subjects. They froze limbs solid and then thawed them to study frostbite treatment. The victims were called logs, as in logs of wood, because the scientists did not consider them human. The unit's commander, Shiro Ishii, was given immunity by the United States after the war in exchange for the research data. He died of throat cancer in 1959, a free man. The Aversion Project was run by the South African apartheid military in the 1970s and 1980s. The goal was to cure homosexuality, which the regime considered a threat to military discipline. Soldiers and conscripts suspected of being gay were subjected to chemical castration, electric shock therapy, and forced gender reassignment surgery. The program operated in secret at a military hospital outside Pretoria. Hundreds of people were subjected to these procedures, many of them against their will and without any legal process. The program was exposed after apartheid ended, but prosecutions were limited, and many of the victims never received justice. The worst experiment on this list belongs to the Nazi doctors. Josef Mengele and his colleagues at Auschwitz conducted experiments that served no scientific purpose at all. Mengele was obsessed with twins. He would find twins arriving at the camp, separate them from their families, and subject them to experiments designed to determine whether eye color could be changed by injecting dye, whether limbs could be surgically attached, whether limbs could disease detached from one. He sewed twins together to create conjoined twins. He injected children with diseases and watched them die. After the war, Mengele escaped to South America and lived undisturbed until he drowned while swimming in 1979. He was never caught. He was never tried. He was never punished. These experiments share a terrifying common thread. In every case, the researchers believed they were pursuing knowledge that justified their methods. They dehumanized their subjects to make the work possible. They shielded themselves behind authority, uniforms, official approval, and the language of science. And they all, without exception, proved nothing that could not have been learned without torture. The uncomfortable truth is that most of us, under the right conditions, would probably press the button. That's what Milgram showed. That's what Zimbardo showed. That's what every experiment on this list showed. The line between researcher and monster is thinner than we want to believe. If you want more dark history that the textbooks, skip, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We post new countdowns every week. Tell me in the comments, which experiment disturbed you the most? I read everyone. See you in the next one.